We're now ready to start unpacking the top 5 strategies and tools to use inside your classrooms, inside your ministries, inside your church hallways, when ministering to individuals with disabilities. So, without further ado, the top 5 strategies that we're going to cover are: Number 1, Jesus and hospitality. We kind of cheated here and we combined them together, but just go with us on that one. Number 2 is routine. Number 3 is communication. Number 4 is structure and differentiation. And number 5 is consistency. Now, before we dive in, there are 2 caveats we need to go over. First, every individual is different, right? We will be speaking in generalities here, especially because we're speaking across disabilities. However, most strategies that we'll share are so helpful for most people. I would argue a lot of these strategies are beneficial for people with and without disabilities. Their effectiveness generally spans across disabilities and ages as well. Second, we all know the saying, even the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And that can be true here in this case as well, where we can go through all sorts of trainings, take classes, research online, prepare ahead of time, and have a great lesson in place and then try to implement it, and it's a disaster. It all goes wrong. And you know what? That's okay. We just pick up the pieces, learn, and move on from there. If you need any examples of this philosophy, look no further than Brad Franklin, Director of Guidelights, North America Ministries. During his first year of teaching, he was feeling pretty good about himself and his abilities. He started off by doing a science unit in class, and it went really well. He did a lesson on animals, he did a lesson on plants, he did this fun lesson where he filled a gigantic fish tank with water and dropped bowling balls and paper clips and all sorts of things into it to see if they would sink or float. And the kids were having a great time, and Brad was just assuming that in the next couple months he'd walk out to the mail and a Teacher of the Year award would be waiting for him. One morning near the end of the science unit, Brad was driving to school, and he had the idea of wrapping up the science unit by doing a lesson on the solar system. He didn't think it needed to be a big, huge lesson, just some time to talk about the solar system, talk about the planets, and how they all orbit around the sun. So, Brad got to class that morning and explained what they were going to do. He assigned each one of his students to be a planet. So, one student was Mercury, one was Venus, one was Earth, and so on. What they were going to do was Brad was going to be the sun, because at that time the world revolved around him anyway, and he was going to stand on top of his chair in the middle of the classroom, and students would line up around him based on where they are in the solar system. And Brad would say, "Go," and they would orbit around him, and everyone could visually see how planets orbit around the sun, and it would be great. As Brad explained this lesson to everyone, both the students and the staff had this really confused look on their faces, like they had no idea what was going on. But of course, at the time, Brad was thinking they have this face of like, wow, what an amazing teacher. How lucky are we to sit under his tutelage? And so he just went with it and got everybody in their place and stood up on a chair as the sun and said, "Ready, set, go." And then madness ensued. Just madness. Mars ran straight out the door. Venus curled up into the corner crying. One student just started running back and forth from wall to wall. Brad was not sure what planet orbits like that, but that's what they were doing, and Brad was standing up on a chair with a bird's eye view of my classroom, just crumbling right before him. And you know what? That was okay. It was all okay. Brad learned from it, had a good laugh, picked up the pieces, and moved on. That's what happens sometimes, and that's totally okay. So let's dive into it. The top 5 strategies to use when ministering to people with disabilities.